the troops on the streets of D.C. have begun carrying weapons, even as President Trump is basically saying mission accomplished and signaling that his takeover of law enforcement in D.C. will soon spread to other cities. An executive order signed today directs the Pentagon to create specialized guard units in every state to deal with, quote, public order issues.
We want to go from here to other places. I made the statement that next should be Chicago because, as you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. This is one of the safest cities right now in the world, as crazy as that sounds. And it took 7 days. It took really 3 days, but we're now in our 11th day.
Right now, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is expected to hold a news conference pushing back on Trump's claim that Chicago is in the midst of a crime emergency. And the city's mayor is already vowing to fight a potential deployment of troops.
What he is proposing at this point would be the most flagrant violation of our Constitution in the 21st century. The city of Chicago does not need a military occupation. That's not what we need. In fact, we've been very clear about what we need. We need to invest in people to ensure that we can build safe and affordable communities.
All right, my panel is here along with CNN's Jeff Zeleny at the White House. So, Jeff, take us through the president's expanded federalization of America's cities.
Well, Pamela, this is just one more example of the use of executive authority the president has been exerting since he took office, but particularly over the last several weeks in terms of federal law enforcement. But it's the specialized units of the National Guard. The president signed an executive order today, one of many in the Oval Office, clearly wanting to keep the focus on law and order issues to order his defense secretary to create this specialized unit to be ready to go in cities across the country. But it's very vague in terms of what they would be used for. Of course, the National Guard is called up all the time to help out and assist, but it's done by the state's governors. It's not done by the President of the United States. So that is the big difference here. But there's also been a big blurring of the lines of the law enforcement activities and functions as well as the National Guard functions. They have historically been very, very different. States' rights, of course, also a key point of Republican orthodoxy, usually not mentioned at all today by this president or the White House. But the president is fixated on Chicago, as he said earlier in the Oval Office.
As you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator.
So, Pamela, this is all just one more of the latest example of the president's interest in expanding the military role to do law enforcement activities. Clearly, he wants law and order to be the centerpiece of his agenda. It's really one of the few things he's talked about in the month of August, at least on the domestic front, never mind foreign policy. But clearly, he was effectively saying how successful his federalized takeover of the streets in Washington has been. He said crime is down. Of course, this has largely been an immigration enforcement exercise as well, but it's an entirely different matter if he would send troops into Chicago. And that's where you're going to see a potential confrontation with Democratic governors like Illinois' J.B. Pritzker.
All right,
Pamela.
Let's discuss with the panel. Jeff Zeleny, thanks so much. Joining us now in the arena is CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams, senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal Molly Ball, CNN political commentator Xochitl Hinojosa, senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign Brian Lanza. And we are also joined by former acting vice chair of the National Guard Bureau, retired Major General Randy Manner. Major General Randy Manner, stand by. We're going to get to you in just a second. I want to go to Elliot Williams first, though, because you heard Jeff ending there on the note of, look, Chicago is different from D.C.,
yes,
right, when you look at a federal takeover. What is the legality here?
The president can recommend anything to a jurisdiction that he wants. He can recommend anything to a governor that he wants. He can ask a state legislature to act, and Congress can suspend funds or hold funds to a jurisdiction to get them to do something. But in terms of writing a law in Washington, D.C., getting Chicago to change its laws or getting the state of Illinois to change the laws, that simply defies the Constitution and the laws of federalism. So again, it's a polite ask, it's a suggestion, it's an order of sorts, but they can't enforce it lawfully. Now, certainly the president can work with the governor if he wishes to activate the National Guard there and thinks there's an emergency in the state, and frankly ought to do that if there is an emergency. But again, Washington can't dictate the laws of a jurisdiction.
And we should be hearing from the Governor Pritzker very soon. Major General Manner, I want to bring you in for context here. The president signed this executive order to establish these specialized National Guard units to address crime in cities and reestablish public order, as he said. Can you explain how that might work, how these units differ from what we see in the D.C. streets right now?
It's really important that all your viewers understand that this is a law enforcement operation in the president's eyes. It is not a military operation. Our young men and women in uniform are not trained in law enforcement activities. They receive at most a couple of hours of training, not the 4 to 6 months that police officers receive. These specialized units, this is extremely disconcerting. Again, for the average American, they might know about infantry units, armor units, transportation units, signal units, and now they're going to create what? Occupation forces that are going to be trained to go in and to occupy a city. This is so un-American. It just makes me sick. This is not something that is what America is about. This is about creating literally military units to monitor our people. And this is actually very disparaging. I'm actually in shock the president is directing the Secretary of Defense to do this.
Those are really strong words from you. What is your reaction to the arming of the National Guard troops in D.C.?
Every time that we deployed the military when I was the acting vice chief, down to and including when I was just a battalion commander in the Virginia Army National Guard, then later as member of the DC National Guard, we always looked at what was the mission and what were the risks that we were going to be involved with. Obviously in combat operations, but equally as important when we were doing disaster recovery, when we were doing helping to save people for flooding or forest fires, we'd look at what was the mission and then what was the risk to our guardsmen and to the people that we were helping. The idea of arming our soldiers and airmen is absolutely absurd. There is no risk that justifies this. This just furthers it amplifies the voice that this is for, not because there's a risk against the guardsmen, but because the president wants to see uniformed armed people on the streets. The same thing with the use of heavily armored vehicles on the streets of Washington. They're not designed to operate in environments like that. They are built and should be used in combat operations, or in the United States, perhaps moving through floodwaters to be able to save Americans. They should not be used as photo ops in front of the Capitol or in Union Station.
All right, stay right there because I want to bring Brian Lanza to get a reaction to what we just heard. I mean, you heard the Major General say these specialized units in the National Guard are un-American. There's no justification for having the National Guard troops. They're armed on the streets, that they're really photo ops, I should say. What do you say to that?
Listen, I think the president has made it abundantly clear that extra manpower is to arrest criminals. It's to arrest illegal aliens, to get them in the process of being deported. I mean, he has stated what the mission is of what he wants this National Guard to be. He wants the National Guard to arrest criminals, which everybody supports, and he certainly wants them to focus on the illegal aliens that he's trying to round up and deport. You know, it's easy to see how he can do that in Washington, D.C. I suspect the courts are going to have stronger opinions when he goes to Chicago.
So wait, I guess the question is, are they there to conduct immigration enforcement or to conduct local criminal enforcement? Because those are two totally different things.
I think you've seen them do both, right?
Right? I mean, they're there in the support role, so then that raises the question, why would they need to be armed?
It's very important to understand that National Guardsmen in this capacity do not have the ability to arrest anyone whatsoever. Yes. I've got to emphasize that. So this idea that the National Guard is going to arrest anybody is absolutely a falsehood and is illegal. Remember, I, like most Americans, fully support community-based efforts to fight crime, and the president needs to reinstate the funds that he pulled back from the local communities for engagement and for hiring additional law enforcement officers. The idea of using our American military against our own people is absurd, and it is not the way that I joined the military or anyone else does to make this happen. The Secretary of Defense said the men love this mission. I'm going to tell you right now, they do not like it. They do not like doing things that they are not trained for, and they do not like the idea of just standing around so much. They like defending our country, and they like saving American lives, and none of those apply in this situation.
Molly, how do you see it? Do you think this could backfire on President Trump?
Absolutely. Look, the audience for this is not the people who live in these cities, right? Most Americans don't live in cities. Most Americans live in suburban or exurban areas. And so I think what Trump is doing here, he realizes that the politics of law and order are a winning hand for him in a general sense. People do feel that crime is out of control. People actually feel, most people believe crime is getting worse, even though that's not actually the case according to the statistics that we have. And so the idea that, you know, these mayors in cities, in red and blue states alike, have failed to contain the crime problem, and that therefore the president has to take action and step in, I think that in isolation could be a winning message. I think the concerns that have been stated here about the way the administration is going about this without partnering with the jurisdictions in question, without necessarily following the law in a lot of cases, and as Jeff said, seeming to use this more as a pretext to do immigration operations than to actually pacify the streets of these places.